Welcome back. Dr. Iredia, what roles do the media have to play in the electoral process, apart from just covering the conventions and rallies and announcing results?
Well, what we have been doing in the past, to me, is a little bit narrow. The media must begin from the beginning. The media must seek to prepare the people for elections, must seek to do what I will call political education before voter education. Because a lot of people who are not voters need to know what the voting is even about. Otherwise, they will want to be part of the voting. So there must be political education well ahead. And the problem I see in media coverage is that the media has taken the literal narrow definition of election as if election is just the casting of ballot. But election is not just an event. It's a series of events. Right? It's a process. So and the media must learn to cover the entire process, starting from the very beginning, and must also give equal emphasis to each segment. Voters register, for example. It's not enough to show us the day the president registered, the day his wife registered. You should tell us what has happened to the entire process. How did we get to where we are? You know, how were the exercises done? Were there people at the centers for registration? You know, things like that. Was there adequate material? All of this ought to be done. But while I will say that the coverage of the voters register, for example, that is the registration of voters, is even good, what is not good is the coverage of claims and objections. Because the Electoral Commission says, come and see whether your name was properly written, whether your address was properly written, whether your name was not inadvertently omitted. The media does not emphasize that. People don't go for it. Now, on voting day, they come, they start to look for their names, which they ought to have done during claims and objections. And because the process was not sequentially covered, there becomes a problem on voting day. And then we begin to blame the Electoral Commission. But we never follow the process. And the fact that the public is not following the process should not be enough for the media itself not to follow the process. I think the media ought to be the standard bearer, you know, the torch bearer to tell us this is what is important now. And you know it is the media that determines the agenda. By emphasizing over and over again an issue through the principle of force multiplication, the media gets to divert attention to what it wants society to talk about. In that circumstance, I think that the media ought to do quite a lot. Secondly, the media has been covering elections in Nigeria like a general event. Election is not a general phenomenon. It's a specialized phenomenon. It should be covered in a specialized way. Different journalists should not cover elections. Political correspondents should be the one covering elections, because they are the ones who know who does what, where, when, and how in the electoral process. They know what it's all about, and they can follow the sequence, they can follow the story. And so they bring in that principle of specialization, and they are able to use either their theoretical knowledge or familiarity with the beat to do a proper job. But when a roving reporter who is just going about, who does not even know the process, goes to cover election, there's a tendency for him to mix up issues. So election must be covered as a specialized event so that the best can come out of it. Election must also be covered in a manner that is comprehensive. We must cover all the segments: voters registration, delimitation of constituencies, nomination of candidates, party primaries, campaigns, casting of ballots, then counting of votes, declaration of candidates. All of these are what make what is called election.
It's still talking about the media. I've heard criticisms of the media. Someone once said, you know, the media have become one big platform for the expression of opinions rather than the propagation of the news. What do you think?
Well, there is some level of merit in the argument, but it's simplistic. Because some people think that the media should have no opinion. And to me, that's not real. If the media should not have an opinion, then there won't be editorials.
Well, there are columnists, features, writers, and
good.
reporters, but everybody is having an opinion and expressing it. And what he was saying is, you know, you're coloring everybody else's perspective of issues.
What should not be opinionated is news reports, which is just a report of what transpired. But again, we must be real. If I'm covering an event and you are covering an event, we may not come out with the same story because our news angles will be different. So you cannot remove the prejudice or persuasion of the reporter from a story. Because when people talk about news, they tell you news is what is new, news is what is just happening, news is the unusual, news is this. That's not true. News doesn't have to be new. If news was to be new, we won't be having news at 4 and repeating it at 9, because at 9 is no longer new, and yet it's still news. So people must begin to understand the reality of news. News is not necessarily something that happened. When something fails to happen, it is news. So people must know that news is bigger than all that concept of just giving definitions of news is something that has happened. Something that doesn't happen is news. Mm-hmm. And so we must now realize that we must allow the journalist to determine what is news. And when the journalist determines what is news, he puts it across. So I don't agree with those who think that it is possible for an inanimate coverage of events. I don't believe that.
You created NT International, in your words, to situate Nigeria in the global information order. Do you think the Nigerian story is being properly told to the rest of the world? Let's use the Boko Haram matter as a reference point, or even corruption.
Well, it is not being told correctly. But I think we are making progress. In the past, we didn't even have any opportunity to tell any story. In addition, most Nigerian media merely quoted foreign sources. That quoting of foreign sources is still there, but these days we are having some level of media initiatives within the nation. Today, a lot of people praise your outfit in the channels for the incisive reports that we see in the news, and that's evidence that there is some progress. I don't agree with those who think that there hasn't been any progress simply because we haven't reached there. And the media in Nigeria cannot be treated in isolation. If the media hasn't reached there, it is because Nigeria hasn't reached there. Now, when you look at the challenges of the media, you can understand why we have not reached there. Which media outfit in Nigeria has the resources for using helicopters to go and cover events? Which media in Nigeria has the support and initiative of the armed forces to drive into war areas? You know, so some of these things that are not happening because of the nature of society. You must look at the society and ask yourself, what is the basic thing? The Nigerian society, for example, is a rumor society. The society likes rumors more than the truth. So whenever you say a rumor, people are interested, people are happy, people are praising you for bringing the rumor. When you say what is right, so these people are instructed to tell us what they like, because we are cynical. So the society that we are in is also very important in looking at. A lot of people want Nigerian media to operate like the American media, but they don't remember that Nigeria is not America. In America, a small television outfit could have like 20 editing suites. In Nigeria, the largest networks might just have 1.5. So why are we always competing, in that way? It doesn't make any sense to me.
You were once quoted as saying that there's no press freedom in Nigeria. Do you still hold that view?
It is not just a view, it is a legal position. Because the press is not free in Nigeria. Our laws don't have anything like press freedom. What we have is freedom of speech. And a lot of people are thinking that since there's general freedom, the media should deduce its freedom from there. Now, the point we have against this is that the Nigerian Constitution, which is fighting shy of granting freedom of speech, does not fight shy in giving the media mandate. You give the media mandate, but you don't give the media freedom. When the time comes for freedom, you say deduce it from the general freedom. But you don't say deduce your mandate from the general mandate. Now, when you look at what happens in other countries, in America, the law is clear. The First Amendment says that nothing shall be done to abridge the freedom of the press. When the Americans say that, they are not unaware that there's general freedom. When Ghana, in Section 162 of its constitution, guarantees freedom of the press, it's not unaware that it also has freedom of speech. Malawi, Section 36 of their constitution, has freedom of the press. So what I'm saying is that the freedom of the press does not stop the general freedom of speech. So if you give general freedom of speech, give a specific freedom to the press, to which you have given a specific mandate to make government accountable to the people in Section 2 of the Constitution, in which you say, Section 22 says, the media shall feel free to make government accountable to the people. So if you have given the media that mandate, why don't you come out specifically to give the media that same power to do the mandate you have given to it? Instead, in Section 39, we have freedom of speech. 39.2 says there shall be freedom to own. So this freedom is for owners, not practitioners. No, you see that if you look at the way the Freedom of Information Act has come about, a lot of people misunderstood it. That, oh, Freedom of Information Act is to give the media freedom. No. Freedom of Information Act gives everybody access to information. And we must begin to recognize that countries that have gone beyond general freedom to institute press freedom know that if you do not encourage the press to believe that they have powers to do some of the things they want to do, investigative journalism will not take place. And when the time comes for libel and slander, you'll find that the media will be shortchanged. That will have problems. The only reason that Nigerian media has been able to operate the way it has been operating is that most people do not go to court. If you go to court against the media will have problems because the laws are not there. So press freedom is not there in Nigeria. What is there is freedom of speech.
Whether at the state or federal level, to whom does a government-owned media have an obligation? Is it to the citizenry or to the government in power?
Well, I must draw a difference here again. The ideal, the media should be answerable to the citizenry. In reality, the media is answerable to the government because the government itself claims that it is acting on behalf of the people. So if the people have given their powers to a government to act on its behalf, why should the media leave that government that is a proper trustee, properly empowered, and then begin to act against it, supposedly in the interest of the people? So who really is the representative?
Who determines public interest?
Who is the representative of the people? Is it the media or the people, or the public, or the government? Ideally, the media ought to do its work without reference to the persons who constitute government. Now, I use the word ideally very seriously because the way government is run in Nigeria, that is not the way government is run in other democracies. We are always talking about constitution in Nigeria. Oh, our constitution is faulty. Then we write another one. Oh, that one is also not good. Then we write another one. We forget that we learned the art of democracy from the British. The British don't have a constitution, and yet they don't have the problems we have. Even when things are in our constitution, we don't follow them. The constitution says that if a president or a governor is not capable of running the affairs of government, he should hand over to his deputy. We don't do that. As I speak in Taraba, for the past 2 years, we have an acting governor. And we have a governor that is not doing anything. And people don't believe that he's incapacitated. So we don't follow the laws. We can only hope that as we progress, we will learn. And more experiences will come. More challenges will come. And people will begin to depart one after the other from the old order.
Dr. Tony Iredia, we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we thank you for watching. Please join us next time when View from the Top returns. But between now and then, let's continue the conversation online at channelstv.com. I wish you a wonderful day.